Yo guys, welcome back to another video. So in today's video of this Hubs 191 series, we're going to be talking about so this is like the third lecture of the year. It's about bone class. So yeah, as a summary, we're going to be talking about bone classes. We're going to be talking about the skeleton as a whole, and then you can subdivide them into different, sections and areas. And then from then on, you can subdivide them again, right? And for Hubs 191, I'd recommend you guys use anatomy apps to kind of help you learn and visualize. You can make flashcards out of them. You can just easily take a screenshot from those apps, and then you just add them to your notes, and it will be much easier. So what I do is I recommend Essential Anatomy or Complete Anatomy. So one of the two apps, they're free. You only really need them for, like knowing the structures of the structures, and then also like what they do. And yeah, so let's get on into the video. So for bone classes, so I'll just like make like a little so this is like something else entirely different. For bone classes, we're gonna be talking about there are three. Actually, there's one, two, three. Yeah, three different types. The first type is long bones. So these are bones that are like, you see your femur, your humerus. So this is like your comically portrayed, these bones, you can find them in comics, right? So this is long. They're longer than they're wide, obviously, okay? And you've got here the end. So these two, the end, and there's something in the middle, and this, label them. This middle is the diaphysis, and the ends are epiphysis. Epiphysis, right? Epiphysis. How I remember them is E for end, right? Epiphysis. And diaphysis is made up of compact bone, while the epiphysis C's are made of cancellous or spongy bone, okay? So I'd say they're made of cancellous bones. Normally people use cancellous. Right. So their main functions is obviously for so there's another name for these guys, cancellous. You could trabecular. Right. And then so what I forgot to tell you guys, so as a whole, bones overall have different functions, but normally their main functions are for storage and protection, right? And then also, be involved in movements as well. So there are two types of bones. You've got compact bones, and you've got spongy or cancellous or trabecular bones. And these compact bones are strong and hard, and these guys are obviously spongy. Lots of air holes in them, and so these compact bones are good for so good when there's a force that's being applied to it in one direction, right? So it kind of like, if there's a force coming down on each end, it kind of resists the force. Like for example, if you're standing up, right, your leg bones are holding you upright, and these would help with weight support, right? For spongy bones, or light bone, so cancellous bones, they are light, and they've got a lot of air through them, so they are they're good at absorbing shocks, and the forces can be diverse in, how do I say, can be transmitted in multiple directions, basically, right? So this is a long bone, and its main function is for movements, right? And you can find them in limbs, and these main bones are for movements, like your humerus, your femur, and then you've got your radius, your ulna, your tibia, your all that stuff, right? Now move on to short bones. Short bones are, as their name suggests, they're short. They're rather, there's a length and width are rather the same size. They're not really, they're not really that different. So, for example, you've got your wrist and your hands, just like this. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to draw them that long. Okay, so for example, this is your wrist. These guys would be classified as short bones, right? Because their length and width are roughly the same size. These guys over here are not. So these guys are still long bones, right? And then because they're short, they have a lot of movement around. They can kind of rotate around, so they're more up for like movement and more fine-tuned movements, basically. Yeah, so they're able to absorb force and spread them out more equally. And a lot of these guys are more cancellous. So more cancellous than compact, right? And then you've got 3 is flat bones. So these are, for example, your skull, right? Your skull is overall flat, right? So if you cut a whatever section through it, if you cut a sagittal section through your skull, you would see it being quite flat. Like the layers of the skull is flat, and they're mainly for muscle attachment and protection. All right, so this is how they'd be shaped. They've got this structure right here. In the middle they're cancellous or trabecular, and the outside will be compact. Right, so this is their other structure. Okay, their main function, their main characteristic is that they're not too brittle, but not too soft, so they can protect your like a lot of the important organs. Yeah, so we've also got irregulars, so a fourth class. So when you think of when you want to look at a bone and classify what type of bones they are, you normally look at the shape, right? But also you have to look at the structure. So if you don't know what specific, just from the shape, you don't know what they are. You also have to look at the functions, right? What do they do and the characteristics. And then so irregular is any other bones that don't fit into these 3 classes or categories. And for example, you've got your jaw, or you've got like your hip bone, for example, your os coxae. So yeah, those are the 4 main bone classes. And normally irregular bones have foramen or foramen. So foramen are just holes, and so I'll just write it now. Foramen, AMEN, and FORAMINE. Amina, sorry. Foramens are big holes. These guys are small holes. So what I mean is that, for example, in your skulls, right? Your skull is an irregular bone, and that have these holes for the nerves to travel through, for blood vessels, to connect around your body. It's also the same for your nerve, your spinal cords, right? You've got your different, you've got your holes where your nerves and your blood vessels can run, and also your hip bones. You've got that large area where, for women, that area is for giving birth, right? And now we'll move on to the skeleton. Right? So the skeleton can be divided into 2 different sections. And you've got the axial skeleton, and you've also got the appendicular, just like that. So axial skeleton is anything that is along the midline, right? So you go straight down, and this includes your skull, of course. So your skull and all the bones in your skull, like in your face structure. You've got your spinal cord, or the vertebral column. You've got your ribs, and then and also you've got like the ribs. Yes, so ribs plus sternum. I'd say just classify them together. You've got your sacrum, it's like a bone. Like the bottom of your hips, like around there. You've got your tailbone. So this is your tailbone basically. So normally back then you'd have a tail as a monkey. You've got your coccyx. So that really like little piece of bone at the end of your tail. And then if you open up an app, you'll be able to see like their shape. So it's like that. Okay, so this is like the overall structure of an exoskeleton, and then you've got your appendicular skeletons, which is basically everything else. You've got your main limbs, you've got your pelvis, just everything else going on. And so your skull, if we talk about our skull, we've got different structures. So we've got your cranium and our facial bones. Just like that. And the main structure is to protect and support sensory organs. So this guy, facial bones, protect and support sensory organs. So our cranium is just where muscle attachments and just encasing the brain, basically. Right. Also, our skull have sutures. So those wriggly lines you see on your skull, right? So the sutures. So as your skull is forming, the bones grow towards each other in the middle, and sutures are where the bones meet, basically. And then you've got your vertebral column, and the spinal cord can be subdivided into different sections, and they can be named. Let's say you've got your cervical section, you've got your thoracic, lumbar, and then just your sacrum and coccyx or coccygeal. So as you see here, CTL, and there are 7 of these. There are 12 of these, and 5 of these. All right. So the way I'd remember this is that you'd have your breakfast at 7, lunch at 12, and dinner at 5. So this is how I would use it to memorize how many nodes there are of the vertebral column, and then just the sacrum and the coccyx alone, right? Just those 2 alone. And then for your rib cage, you have your sternum, you have your ribs, you have your just like the muscles attachment to it as well. So, but we're just talking about the skeletal structure. For your appendicular skeleton, you've got your mainly your limbs, right? And so proximal to your body, proximal to your exoskeleton, there are single long bones. One thick singular long bone. So for example, if you got your skeleton, you've got your arm and you've got your legs, right? So you've got these 2. So you've got your arms, and you've got 2 other bones over here, 2 other bones, 2 other bones. So more proximal to the exoskeleton, you've got 1 thick bone, and more distal from the skeleton, you've got 2 thinner bones, I'd say, and smaller in size as well. So for your arms, you've got your humerus. So just this big guy over here. Sorry, I just humerus. Then you've got your radius, ulna. And then for your legs, you've got your femur. You've got your, fibula and your tibia. So tibia is more medial compared to fibula. Fibula is more distal or lateral, sorry. And your radius is more lateral and your ulna is more medial. And what you can do is you can compare the size, right? So if I was to compare the size of the humerus and the femur, so this is your arms, this is your legs, and I'd be like, I'll just draw out a table. Sorry. I would just draw out the table and be like size, and then the articulation. So what articulation means is that it's the groove, it's where the bones meet, right? And if the articulation, it's like, imagine you're just holding your hand, you're just clasping your hand like that. And so the articulation is where bones meet. And if the articulation is deep, bones is harder to move around. It's more, provides more of like a structural support, rather than if it's shallow, then it's easier to move around. It's more for movement, right? So the humerus is obviously shorter and lighter compared to the femur, and the articulation is also shallower. It's more for movement and deeper. This one's deeper, heavier, and longer. So the deeper is for stabilizing, and shallow, more shallow is for movement. Right. And then also you've got the structure of your hands and your feet as well. So we'll go deep into that. So for your hands, for your hands, I'll just make another kind of like comparison for your hands and your feet. That you've got carpals, you've got metacarpals, and you've got phalanges. For feet, you've got tarsals, metatarsals. There you go. And you've got phalanges as well. So these are the bones. So like as I drew the structure up here, as you see my hand, this is like roughly what a hand would look like. And you got these different bones. So this guy over here would be your carpals. So there are 8 of the carpals. So for hands, there are 8 carpals, 5 metacarpals. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm probably missing some structure here. And then you've got 14 phalanges. So so if you like open your hand, the way I think about it is kind of like this, right? My hand. So this is my hand. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 carpals in my wrist, around my wrist palm area over here. Mostly because they're, as the carpals, they're short bones. They, they can move around. There's more spongy, so they can move around a lot more. So it's more for like fine control movement. And then if you run your hand along here, you've got these bones, these thick bones over here, along your fingers. These are your metacarpals, and there are 5 of them because there are 5 fingers. But then instead of having 15 phalanges, like, because like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so 3 of each, you'd only have 14 because your thumb is actually only made up of 2. And so the way I look at this is I would just spread my hand, my thumb just looks shorter than the rest. So I just say these guys have 2. The thumbs have 2 phalanges and the rest have 3. So you can also kind of see from the grooves on your fingers as well. So 3 phalanges, 3 for all of these 4, but then kind of 2, right? Just 1, 2, big, the only distinct groove over here, like that. For your foot though, for your feet, my bad. I'll just put them in bracket here. 14. There are only 7 tarsals, still 5 metatarsals, and 14 phalanges. So same thing. I'm not going to show you my feet, but how I remember is it's kind of weird because tarsals, there are only 7 tarsals, but 8 carpals. Because how I think of it is that feet is more for like stabilizing. It's not for more for movement. Is for more feet are more for locomotion, stabilizing. So that obviously have less bone, less fine tune or control bones. That's how I remember it, of the different amount of bones for each one of them. Right? So feet have no special movements because the articulations for feet are deeper, right? And now, so we're going to be talking about how limbs attach to the axial skeleton, right? So how the appendicular skeleton attaches to the axial one. And, there are there are 2 ways limbs can attach to your body. Think about your arms and about your legs, right? So where arms attach to you is in your shoulders, right? So I'll just draw like a rough sketch of the human body. No, it's not perfect. It's far from good. Like that. Okay, it's an ugly one. Alright, so I'll just... Just like kind of like that, right? So around here is where your legs attach, and around here is where your arms attach, and these are your shoulders, right? Shoulders, and these will be your hip. So there is a pectoral girdle, pectoral girdle, or pectoral can be shoulder, right? And you've got your pelvis girdle. So pelvis is for your pelvic or your hip, right? And the pectoral girdle is made up of the scapula posterior and the clavicle anterior. So if you know what I mean, there's like a, if you reach out to your back, you'll see two really like thick bones that run around your like just below your shoulder, behind your back, so posteriorly. Right, so this will be made up of scapula posterior and your clavicle. So it's your collarbone anterior. And for the pelvis girdle, there's actually the hip bone or the os coxae, coxae, os space coxae, and you've got your sacrum as well. So as I mentioned, sacrum somewhere over here, it's your tailbone, right? So basically there are two pectoral girdles. There's two of them. But for pelvis girdle, there's only one. If you really think about it, just like that. Basically, but there are two hip bones that kind of like connect together to form one big pelvis, or the pelvis girdle. So there's two of this guy and there's one of this guy. And you know, these the limbs will be attached on through the ball, like, you know, that articulation I showed you earlier. And then you've also got some muscle attachments for movements, you know, and then you've got for stabilizing effect as well. And so mainly, yes, the pectoral girdle main functions are for movement and stabilizing, while the pelvic girdle is more for weight bearing. So when you're standing, right? And then for your pelvic, for your os coxae, for your hip bone, it's divided into three structures. So it's really hard to show you. It's kind of like, I'm not good at drawing 3D, so again, you'd have to use your your anatomy apps. But it's divided into three structure: ilium, ischium, and pubis. Right, and then so females, right? So we're gonna be talking about the hip bone for males and females. Obviously, females will have thicker hip bones because they give birth. And so I'll just like search something. I'll show you. So this right here, I'll kind of like try and visualize it for you. Kind of like that. Just like that, okay? So there's this kind of like, when they're connected, you've got this W shape like this. Sort of ugly, but this is how it looks like. This right here is your subpubic angle. Pubic angle. And because female have larger hip bones because they give birth, their subpubic angle will also be larger, because if they're larger, they're like more farther apart. For males, they're more closer because they don't give birth, so it's just like that. So they have a smaller subpubic angle. And so be careful when you look at your structure between the ilium and the ischium, because there's no real like defining line between the two, but just know that they do exist in the pubis. So the pubis would be like around this area, I'd say pubis is around there, and ilium is just upper part, and ischium would be this like lower part down there, just like that. There's no like distinct separation, I'd say, but just be careful about it. Yeah. So thank you for watching today's video. I'll see you guys in the next one, where we'll be talking about your movements, the different planes, just the movements. Of course, they're relative to the planes, and then your anatomical position. Just how you stand and stuff. And then we will talk about types of tissues as well. So thank you.